Hey Dallas, Dr. Bryan here again with My Kids Dream Team. I'm going to make sure the volume is good. This picks up a lot. I'm here with my friend again. Can you introduce yourself so everybody knows who you are?
Hi, I'm Heather Wells.
And you are part of the Brain Balance Centers, correct?
I am.
We're at the South Lake location.
Yes.
Awesome. And it's a beautiful facility. And so I love talking with her. She understands. We talk in nerdy neurological language. It's almost a different conversation. But let's go back. And we've done the interview before, but part of the reason I love talking to you is just your passion, and that does involve your history and your story behind it. So again, just kind of briefly remind people why this is such a moving thing for you.
Yeah. This is my passion and my calling because I have pretty much been the child, the parent, and the caregiver. I was born legally blind with tumors on both optic nerves, and so I was just in a constant churn that people didn't even know about. And then I took in two boys with neurodevelopmental challenges. They had been exposed to drugs in utero and lots of abuse and neglect, and so there were environmental as well as genetic factors at play. And I've also been taking care of my dad and my mom for 20 years. My dad lost the right hemisphere of his brain to a tumor, and my mom had a massive stroke and lots of other complications. Wow. So it's always top of mind to me that when you have children who are facing these challenges, it affects the entire family unit. Moms and dads who love each other very much, but they have very short fuses with each other. And then they feel guilty about that, and they already are wondering what they're doing wrong as a parent.
Right.
And so I really think I'm equally passionate about helping get to the root of these kids' challenges so they can thrive and have their highest quality of life, and kind of restoring the family unit and letting parents know it's not their fault, and the things that they are noticing in their children are valid and they need to be heard. Everyone deserves a voice.
Absolutely, yeah. And that is, that's a great point, because it's tough enough being a parent without any, neurological developmental issues, and then if you add that, it just impacts the marriage. That's so often what I see is husband and wives who do love each other. But it's always a conversation about what do we do next, and it's just a constant strain. And so having a resource who understands that, who has lived it, is unique and special, and that's why we love speaking with you. So let's talk a little bit about that. So if you're on, please ask a question. Okay, we're here. This is a resource for you. If you have a question, somebody else has the same question. So we'll try to answer a lot of questions and jump ahead of it, but please ask questions. So we have some exciting news. I knew it, but then you just reminded me of it. You have a book coming out.
I do.
Awesome. Okay, so tell us a little bit about the book, the title of the book, what's it about, and how do we find it?
All right. And the book is called The Hidden Churn: What Kids Wish They Could Tell You and What You Can Do About It. And the reason I call it the hidden churn is because, there are some kids where the cause may be hidden, but the manifestations are not.
Right. And
you're getting the calls from the school, or you're pulling your hair out at home wondering what to change about your approach. But sometimes, just like I was the child who, sometimes you think of the invisible child. There's a book called The Invisible Child. Yeah. And it has a picture of all of these kids in color at school, and then there's one in black and white in the background, just sort of timid, withdrawn, blending into the woodwork. And there's a story that goes with that about how does that play out later. If they are barely getting by, you just have this little inkling that something's not quite right. And sometimes it's teachers who notice it, sometimes it's the parents. Right. But unless they both do, sometimes those things go overlooked until all of a sudden a little crack in the foundation of development has become this big, overwhelming thing. Yep. And what just happened? And so, this book is about giving a voice to the children, helping parents understand them on a different level, not who they are in their heart, but these challenges that they're having. Yeah. And it has a lot of stories in it, a little bit of my story, a lot from different people I've been blessed to work with over 30 years. But then it also has a lot of research and science in there to back it up, to show really where this is coming from and how we know the foundational issues.
Awesome. And so do you have a release date yet?
We don't have the exact date yet.
Okay.
It is going to be late March or early April. It's going to be available on Amazon.com. And there are several nonprofits. I do a lot of nonprofit work, and numerous ones of those are going to be also having it on their websites as well. Bryan's House here in Dallas is one of them.
Very
they do
cool.
Great work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you'll let us know, and then we'll put the link up on our Facebook page. So come end of March, early April, look for that Amazon
Very
link.
specific.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's always nice to be, ready and looking for that kind of stuff. Awesome. And in that, you're touching on points that are very important that I love that you're including stories, because I feel like a lot of parents come in, and a lot of times the kids can't communicate, and they're an island in and of themselves, but parents end up being an island. And then we talked again about the nucleus and how they think that they're kind of alone in this scenario. I think sometimes maybe they don't know that there are others out there who have experienced it and who have felt lost and confused. Maybe in one of the, we talked about this last time when we spoke, but just the parents will notice things and they'll say something and then they'll be dismissed. Yeah. And so, that should never happen. You shouldn't be dismissed, right? And so I think that's, one of the things that we pride ourselves on in our clinic is not dismissing you, like trying to find you an answer. Whether or not we're a good fit for you is not the ultimate end be. It's, can we give you an answer? Can we direct you to a place? And I know your heart's there as well.
That's one of the reasons we connected.
Yeah.
When we met at that event we both spoke at, was that one of the things that impressed me about you is that you're a big collaborator, and we are too. So it's like you and I can be like, you need to go see it, because I know that you have something that we don't have, and vice versa.
Right.
Or the two together is just that much greater.
Yeah,
because
next level.
We don't want just better in outcomes or awesome incomes. We want through the roof.
Yes.
And I know you do too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, again, that's why we love working with you. So for those who may be watching and are not familiar with brain balance centers, maybe they've heard of it. Dr. Blanking his last name. Morello. Yes, Morello. Yes, he's got a great book called Disconnected Kids, and that's part of his development here. But tell us a little bit. So, a kiddo who comes in, what's a typical start look like for them? Do you assess them? Do they come in with a diagnosis? Are you diagnosing them? How does this work?
Yeah. We don't diagnose kids. We're all about getting to the root and addressing it at the foundation. A lot of families, it's kind of split. Some families come in already having labels. They need them so that they can have IEPs or 504s at the school for accommodations and things like that. And others come because they want to avoid the label.
Right.
One of the things, sometimes they're necessary. I'm not anti-label in all circumstances, because it defines what an issue is, and so people can address it. Right. But the issue is that if you rely on accommodations, you're not actually fixing anything. The child is still churning, and life doesn't always just roll out modifications for you.
Right.
So there's an issue with that. And the other thing is, this is fascinating. 98 to 99% of adolescents and adults, and there have been several studies that have reported this, say that rejection sensitivity syndrome is present in them. Their happies are happier, but their feelings of rejection are even stronger. That's compelling to me. And 30% say that is the most debilitating part of having different kinds of executive function disorders. ADHD is a subset of executive function. And we talked before about how some things can mask as ADHD, even though that is a real thing, but it's really misunderstood. But a lot of these kids have difficulty separating what they do from who they are. And sometimes labels, and sometimes it's not even a medical label. It can even be the problem child,
right,
or the slow learner. Even those kinds of labels transfer with them, and they feel like they can't get away from them. And that's just another thing that can make them kind of give up the churn. They're churning.
Without progress, right?
Yeah, and that gets frustrating because we're not getting to the root. And then the other thing is, man, people have already doomed me to act like this or learn like this. And so what's the point?
Yeah, kind of like a self-fulfilling
it is.
prophecy, right? Yeah. And, to speak to that point, that is, I think, one of the things that we connect the most on is a diagnosis can be good because there can be accommodations that are needed academically, right? I get that there's that point, but oftentimes I'll get little kiddos in and they're tied to that. Like, I am this.
It's their identity.
Yes, and they can't be separated, and so that's important. I think from multiple standpoints. One, I think what I'd like to touch about us as clinics and centers. How do we address that? Do you have a way of connecting with that child? Because for me, I don't ever try to bring up the diagnosis in front of them. I just speak to them.
Yeah.
Any other kid.
Yeah. We're huge on getting to know who this child is in their heart and soul.
Yes, there we go.
And that is, they are a brother, a sister, a son, a daughter, a baseball player, but they're more than that. Mm. They are their character, they're their heart, they're their thoughts, their motivations. Mm. And now if kids have decreased proprioception, all sorts of sensory motor issues, the motor system and the sense of identity are so connected. The cerebellum communicates with the prefrontal cortex, where all of our executive functions are. So if you even have clumsiness, that can lead to lack of identity or proprioception. You don't feel your body the right way. But intrinsic motivation is so important. Mm. So much of what kids have to do is extrinsically motivated. They don't want to do that math assignment, and through life, there's just so much of that. They might already feel out of control of their thoughts and their bodies, and now I have all these other things thrust on me that I'm struggling with. Yep. I'm running out of gas in my tank, and I don't care. I don't understand what's the point. Why am I having to do this? And sometimes there's a better answer than because the teacher said so or because mom and dad said so. I mean, there's some truth to that sometimes. But sometimes, how can I connect this to something that's important to them? Mm. I don't want to do math, but you admire how daddy's an accountant, and right. and so that starts internalizing a motivation for doing it. Yeah. When you know what matters to them, you first have to get them a sense of identity, and so many things get in the way. But once they do have that, find ways to bring extrinsically motivated tasks that they must do to a place that matters for them. Yeah. The research is compelling about what a difference that makes.
Connecting the internal and the external world. So I'm reading this book called The Eye of the Vortex, and it's a fascinating book. And he talks about, I'll kind of summarize it without using a lot of language, but the basic summation of what he's saying is when the brain and body, when you don't know where you are, the proprioception that we're talking about, you lack the ability to predict or foresee the future, which is immensely important for executive function, right? And so these kiddos, it was interesting. I was reading this mom was giving this example, or sorry, she wasn't mom, but she was like OT or something. I forget what she was, but she was saying, like, if you were to write a list out of a kid, for a kiddo with struggling like this, like how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, because they've lost that brain body connection, they cannot envision how to make that.
Yes. Yes. Prediction is, you first learn that in your sensory motor system. Right. So if I feel my body, I'm walking to this door, I predict. It's subconscious for us. We predict when we need to reach out and grab that handle and open the door. Right. If simple things like that. If the other thing too is having the different parts of the brain. Synchronization is everything. Dr. Thomas Inzel, former head of the National Institute for Mental Health, was saying, we've got to catch up to science. Science is telling us you have to have synchronization in those parts of the brain. And that is details and big picture. If you are trying to put together a puzzle and you've lost the picture on the outside of the jigsaw puzzle box, I don't know what the end game is here. You're right. So even if I do have these details, they're floating out in space. Yes. And I don't have the glue to connect them together. And then I don't understand cause effect. I can't make inferences and predictions. And having that predictive ability is not only important in school and literacy. What do you think is going to happen next? It decreases anxiety. Yes. Anxiety comes because I don't know I'm ready for baseball, and these are the 3 chores at home. Right. Now I have 3 things to remember instead of 9. They don't have, a lot of these kids don't have germane load. They cannot do that for themselves yet, and we have to cultivate that. The germane load is being able to categorize and have the glue that I know which things go together, the relationships among things. And so, because I understand why things go together and how they're related, I don't have to have photographic memory. I'd be really in trouble. If photographic memory were required.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I'd be in trouble too. Hold on. Thanks for texting me, Brittany. I don't know what you said, though. I couldn't see what was going on with that text message there. Sorry. No, you made up some great points. So let's talk a little bit. Let's rewind a little bit and then kind of push forward again. I think one of the biggest things that you talked about is the prediction, okay? So academics is a big one, but this also goes with emotional regulation, which I know you touched on. So, and then I'll touch again on social, but let's talk about that. A kiddo who cannot predict their action, they cannot foresee the future, they don't understand that if I do this, this happens. This is a huge issue.
It is. Because
these kids are being labeled as disobedient, defiant, however you want to categorize it, right? Like they may look just absolutely defiant, like just a bad kid, right? Like that's how they classify it. But in reality, they don't understand that when I do this, and then so when they get in trouble, then they're at a complete loss. Like I don't understand. There's no connected dots for them. They don't understand this. And so let's talk a little bit about that and how in your experience here and what you all have seen. Let's hear a little bit from your side.
Oh, I had a mom just the other day saying, my husband spanked my kid because he wanted to air up these tires in the field, and we told him he couldn't right now because it's really muddy out there, blah, 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 blah. And he went and did it because it was, and that totally looks like he's being defiant.
Right.
But the point was that he waited a few minutes and the sun came out, so it's like it's not muddy anymore. Like that one just happened the other day.
Logically, I get where he's coming from. Yeah, the sun's out, it dried the water.
Like we literally told you can't do it today. But by the working memory, you can't do it today. I might even forget certain words in your sentence that completely change the meaning of what you're saying to me. You can't walk on the road with that traffic. The fact that I even have to explain that to you means the child cannot predict.
Right.
This is a real case from last week. You cannot walk to grandma's house on a busy road because they might not see you and you could get hit. But I'll see them.
Right, yes, yeah. You're not seeing both sides of
it's a windy, curvy road that people speed down. And the fact that every single day they have to reiterate why it is not okay to do that.
Right.
And why you have to take a different route. That also, you're not building, it all goes together. I mean, you separate them and you also go together. Germain load is like, these are things that are dangerous. These are things that inform my decisions. A peer pressure, do this.
Right, yeah,
if
absolutely.
I don't understand the difference, but the ramifications of my actions, I might make really poor decisions and get into these ruts of thinking, and that's
a very good point.
That self-regulation, that is impulse control. So I don't even have time to think through them because I just jump to action.
Right.
So.
Yeah, so, and again, that was kind of touched on. So we talked about academics. They cannot understand the executive function of planning something out, right? So that's very important in academics, right? Like they have to understand why this is structured this way. Emotional regulation, they don't understand that, they need to control their emotions and there's consequences for their behavior. But let's go into social too, because I think a lot of times this is seen and you'll see kiddos who are a little older, but they don't know how to interact. They're awkward, or there's literally a disconnect there between how they interact with their peers. And so let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and a lot of them start out young. Not always. The ones who are biting and throwing things, they may have difficulty with relationships from early on, but they may have that approachability. That impulsivity can also be approached. Hey, I want to meet you. What's your name? They're just like the life of the party, so to speak. But they might be missing out on social cues. You can get by with quite a bit when you're little, unless you're hurting them.
Yeah.
But as you get older, you're supposed to pick up on a lot of nuances of things. The way somebody said something, which word they stressed in the sentence, which can be auditory process. It could be social skills, nonverbal, based on proprioception and things like that.
Absolutely.
I might miss it because of visual perception. So many things can get in the way,
and
so all of a sudden, like your friend is giving you this little look, like enough already. Listen to me talk. and I don't hear them, and it just goes over my head, and then I don't know why I lose these friends.
Yeah.
That happens a lot, where they have a lot of friends early, and then they start losing them as they get older because social expectations go up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have she's 15 now? She's 15. But what we're talking about this is her to the nth degree, right? So, took her SATs. She's in ninth grade. She took her SATs, scored like college grade levels, but doesn't have any friends. When I talk to her, I'm like, do you hear me? She can comprehend it, but she doesn't display. Like, there's this kind of like almost like blank stare. And I know she understands like the words, but I think she's sitting there processing my facial expressions and my tone and the way that I inflect. And so you can just see it academically. You can see it emotionally, because she doesn't display a lot of emotions. I think what's happened is she's kind of suppressed everything, or it's so in control of it. It doesn't let anything good or bad out, that you just kind of, it's almost like a deadpan face. Like, you just.
That is, yes, it can be the opposite of the lashing out. It can be not expressive of emotions at all. And part of that is I can't wrap my brain around these emotions if I have trouble with abstract concepts.
Yep.
Or kids with equilibrium issues, which are almost always invisible. I mean, 99.9% of the families I've worked with over the last 30 years had no idea that if their kids had equilibrium issues, and that's the first sensory system that receives information and then distributes it to the rest for processing. And so there's a huge link between issues with equilibrium that's invisible most of the time. It was with me, and I had tumor. And mental health issues later, because if you don't have your bearings, like I am still, if you are having to consciously exert effort to feel upright and balanced, and you're talking to your friend and you're like, I don't even enjoy talking to friends, what is wrong with me? There's something wrong with me. Everyone else wants friends. I find it really a struggle. It might be lack of emotional quotient and connection, but it also might be that it is such a struggle to be upright and balanced. That also affects me picking up on your cues from a visual perception standpoint. So anxiety and mental health issues are huge as they get older without those things being addressed. And then it also is very important about starting to give kids some objective feedback as opposed to praise, especially as they start getting a little older. That sounds so counterintuitive. That sounds really counterintuitive. But I have read meta-analyses numerous times that each one might cover 128 studies here and 40 studies there that are showing that if we are all just about congratulations, I'm so proud of you for getting a 98 on your test, or you got MVP of the game, of course you're going to be happy about that. But if we are too focused on praise, instead of saying, I am so proud of the time you took on this paper, and even when things didn't go right, you kept doing it, the strategy you used, your perseverance, that starts helping kids understand character and that they're human beings and not human doings.
Yeah, so it's not the grade that matters as much as like just praising them for the work and the effort and the time.
What was their best? What were the absolutely.
And their commitment to the project. That's huge, right? I think because you will see kids who have neurodevelopmental issues, who struggle, who are very much tied to grades or to something, right? And it's not. I know it's not intentional with the parents, but it's
the total natural.
Right.
That is an innate instinct,
right,
to praise the end result instead of everything within them that brought that about.
Yeah, their perseverance, their willingness to put in the time and effort, the patience that it takes. And so I think that's a huge thing for parents to take away. Grades are, whatever. If they get a 98, that's awesome. You should praise them for that. But what you really need to fine-tune in your communication is praising their effort in that, right? Because a 98 or a 78, you still need they put effort into it, right? These kids are very intelligent oftentimes, but they put a lot into this, and so they'll basically. I have one little guy that just was absolutely just emotionally destroyed when he didn't get an A. He was so tied to the A.
Yes. Yeah.
That was his thing.
And that's like a flexibility.
Yeah,
and a lot of times that it can OCD-ish or actual OCD, that's a tendency, and that's like a flexibility. Another really good part of that conversation is, what made you decide to select this topic? That is totally objective. And you know what you're doing when you do that, besides connecting with your child, which is super important? Right. You are helping them figure out who they are. And you are identifying what motivated them to pick this topic. And then that is something that can inform decisions about how you address other things as well, and get that intrinsic motivation going.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that was a gem there for you parents. I know it's so easy, but I've seen parents, and I think you brought up just a fantastic point there, that we need to focus on their character in this and really fine tune that, because I've seen kids get so lost in this, and I hate to see that. And so, I know it's not intentional. There's no malice obviously involved. It's just what you would want to do, right? Yeah.
The hard part about it is when what instinct tells us is not necessarily always the best. That's not fair.
True. I feel like I was ripped off on this one.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Awesome. Okay. So, boy, we talked about a lot. Any questions out there? Sorry, the screen's a little far away from me, so I can't really see anything. It looks like Brittany. Yeah, I think a phone call came through. That's why I stopped. Anyways, if you have any questions, please comment. Please, just let us know what your question is. If you have a really private question that you'd like for us to address personally, right? Like a direct message, either DM either of us. I tagged her, but your clinic is. How would they find the center?
This center where we're right now is at Brain Balance. You can email southlake@brainbalance.com. And of course, there's one, Mansfield at brainbalance.com. I actually found out people in Houston are watching this, so you can also email Katie at brainbalance.com. And I know that I have actually a few owners from other parts that are watching right now.
Oh, pretty cool.
And so I know that Plano at brainbalance.com is on.
Awesome. Happy to have you.
Yes,
thank you.
and Denton at brainbalance.com. And then Roxanne, I don't know. Roxanne, I'm pretty sure, is on. And you can send a message. But we're all over the country. I own centers in Texas. But in my email address, if you ever wanted to reach out to me, is hwells, WELLS, at brainbalance.com if you had a more private question.
Yeah. And then this is on my page, so you can directly message me, or please, you can call or text our number, which is 972-387-4700. And we've had a little trouble with our messenger, so it's much easier to get a hold of us via phone call or text message. All right. What's another fun topic we could talk about to finish out we've talked about your book. We've a lot of fun stuff. Do you have a testimony? Give me a testimony. That's what I want to hear. Let's hear something fun.
Oh, okay.
And encouraging, right? Yes, all good stuff.
Yeah, yes. Well, there was a little boy who had gotten kicked out of, I believe it was 5 preschools by the time he was 3.5.
Ooh.
It may have been 4. It was either 4 or 5.
That's enough.
It was a lot. And he was about to get kicked out of the next one. And until this mom called me in tears. Mm-hmm. And what was so tricky about them recognizing his developmental level is that his auditory processing was like an 8-year-old.
Okay. He
was so articulate. His sentence structure was just, it was like talking to a 3rd grader on that level.
Wow.
But his social emotional growth and his relationship skills were age 2, 3, that kind of thing. And of course it stemmed from primitive reflexes, sensory motor issues that we talked a lot about last time. And I went and met with the school, and what I would do is I would give them strategies to use in the meantime. The preschool, they were amazing to work with.
Oh, that's awesome.
But give them strategies to use in the meantime, and they listened, and they did it, but thankfully. But here's where he is developmentally. I helped them understand that inside one body, you can have many different ages of development.
Yeah.
And that you have to adjust your strategies accordingly. But we went through the program, and then I would update the school, now use these in the meantime. These are Band-Aids, but here's what's going to help him be successful in the meantime. He just came back, actually, just a few weeks ago. Pretty soon after we did our last Facebook Live.
Awesome.
For the 1-year post-assessment, because we continue to support. We do a Phase 2 program. End of sessions is not the end of our relationship by any means. We want to continue to be a support. And they came back, and you know what the parents' question was? Mom and Dad are so smart and so articulate, but they said, so when is the bottom going to drop out? Because we have not gotten a single complaint, not even a letter from school. He was so inflexible before, like transitions were very, very difficult, which goes back to prediction.
Yeah.
As well as,
You're not going to be flexible if you can't predict.
Yeah,
it just
that's a huge thing. Transitions did him in. His emotions were a roller coaster, throwing, screaming. And they're like, it was in that moment they realized it was real. No, this is your new reality. Yeah. I mean, it was just no friends, social, emotional, dysregulation. It was one of the most severe I've ever seen, and just inconsolable. It wasn't one of those things where I flip a switch and then, hey, lollipop, and now I'm... Don't do that. Well, that's not the best. But anyway, he is just... And by the way, he came and he sat there and played with a new toy quietly the whole time. And we talked, I think, for an hour and a half.
That's awesome.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
Like, what? But that is who he already was. But he just, he has the flexibility now, self-regulation. He was already a brainiac, Yeah. That was their concern is this just has to not be real,
Yeah, like it's too good to be true sort of deal. Yes. And so you touched on an important part, right? The brain as a whole needs to communicate. Mm-hmm. And when there are gaps in development, for whatever reasons, or there's missing pieces, we'll say something like that, the brain does not communicate as a whole. And so you'll get kiddos in the same brain, right, but in different developmental regions or times. And so that is so important to understand, okay? And I want to emphasize this. This is very important. A lot of practitioners do not understand this, but a lot of schools don't understand this either. They don't understand the progression, how things work. And so when they don't, they're very confused, right? Like, how does he speaks at, what did you say, the third grade level? Like, very articulate, like, you're like, you might be smarter than I am, sort of deal. You're like,
oh, I totally think he was smarter than I.
But then when it comes down to other skill sets that they should have at that age, socially or whatever else, they don't, emotional control, they don't have it because that brain as a whole is not communicating. And so that's what we need to understand as practitioners, as centers, as practices, as parents. That's what our whole goal should be, is to supplement our kids, to get our kids' brains connected so that they become a whole individual and that there's not bits and pieces missing. So
yeah,
it's not a lost cause is what I'm trying to get to at the end of the day. You can have a kiddo who's 5 and who struggles emotionally, but then after a year, you said the year follow-up?
They did a 1 year post, like a year after they had finished the program.
Okay, 1 year after. Okay.
They did our program for 8 months, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
I mean, in 8 months, that kid's life changed. Did a 180.
Yeah.
How cool is that? I mean, this is my largest struggle when it comes to medications, because there are instances where medications are needed. But when you tie a kid to a medication, you're basically saying this is what he needs. He's stuck at this point. He's not moving. This is his point in time developmentally, and we're going to use this to get whatever we're looking to go. And in the end, what we're saying is they're not tied to that. The brain can adapt and change.
Neuroplasticity.
Yes.
And by the way, neuroplasticity means that what he just said, our brains are not fixed. They are not set in stone. By doing hard things, and when kids understand this, when you do challenging things, your brain grows. Mm-hmm. And that is something parents and kids need to know. Duckworth and Dweck are two leading researchers on a growth mindset and grit and resilience, and they have done studies where one group, and they've done studies all the way from the younger students all the way through college, and you can do this, just like the reinforcement thing, that's great, but that alone might help a little bit. But when they understand, then they're taught about neuroplasticity on the level that's appropriate for them.
Yeah.
When you do hard things, your brain grows.
Yeah.
It grows new pathways, so it's communicating. That, because they sometimes have difficulty with those abstract concepts you were talking about earlier, that sort of gives it a tangible manifestation that they can latch on to and grow those abilities to learn abstract concepts. There are some really good books out there. I have no affiliation with this, but like Your Fantastic Elastic Brain, Shape It, Stretch It, Grow It, or something like that.
That's a good...
It's fantastic, but on any level, when they understand that, or there's pictures on the internet of brains with flexing their muscles and to demonstrate that neuroplasticity. And by the way, another thing that let's say that your child is being bullied. I hope not, but it happens, unfortunately. Because we want to teach them a growth mindset and that people can change, if somebody's bullying your child, I would avoid saying the bullier. Because now, even though that they're not being nice to your child, you are putting a label on them and unintentionally conveying this person is a bully and that's not going to change. That's how they interpret that. And instead of the person who does the bullying. So then that could be a very confusing message. Oh, they're just a bully.
Right. You've labeled them now.
But your brain can change. No, but you just said they're a bullier.
Yeah.
And so we need to understand the malleability of the brains, not only for our own kids and our own selves, but also for those they may be having conflict with. And even on that specific point, there have been tons of studies that showed that the kids who were being bullied did less retaliatory actions towards the one doing the bullying when they were taught this about the neuroplasticity. So I think that's a really important point.
Yeah, I think because when you label them a bully, you're essentially saying they're a threat at all times, right? Like
they can't change. They
can't change. Yeah, I mean, it's not like a lion. A lion was always a lion, sort of deal. That's true. But an individual with their plasticity can change. So I think that was a beautiful point. I have a question here that says, does emotional issues with family bring some of this stuff on? Okay. Are you talking about emotional conflict within the family triggering some of this? If you're still on, if you could just comment. But let's hear your take on this.
Yeah, if that's what the question is, it can, but I want to say this in a not fault way. Not like, that's why there's these challenges. Because it's kind of twofold. One is, epigenetics. We have certain DNA markers that are going to be what they are no matter what, like eye color. But we have other DNA markers that can take different paths depending upon what they're exposed to. And so there is that aspect of it and having that nurturing environment. But sometimes, let's say there's a conflict with a husband and wife who are really not getting along, that is going to impact any child. A child with some of these challenges we're talking about is going to have it's probably going to exacerbate those issues. Or if it's understandable, I have moms who come in all the time feeling so guilty about, I fly off the handle with my child, and I hate myself for it, and I just can't stop.
Right.
But taking some, we talk about giving the child settling time. If you're having to deal with, your child's going to need settling time. If they're emotionally dysregulated, allow yourself that too. Put yourself in timeout. And I don't mean punishment. I mean settling time.
Right.
So that your pupils aren't dilated, your heart rate slows down, and you can approach them in a very neutral tone. Because if you've ever had a fight with someone, they start yelling at you, and y'all can just keep escalating each other.
Just match it.
Even if there are conflicts elsewhere that don't involve the child, and you come in a heightened state with this child, they might mirror what they've observed, and then that could even be a trigger for you because you feel like my child is talking to me like this person I'm having trouble with, and then you might have a trigger response to that. So slower speech, fewer words, fewer gestures are really important. Take some deep breaths beforehand. That is not just let's meditate, which is great. I mean, there's a lot of research on that, but when you do that, you are redistributing the oxygen, just like exercise is. You can redistribute the oxygen to where it needs to be, because when we get into a fight or flight mode, oxygen goes to attack.
Right.
But getting your pulse and your blood pressure and everything down. But yeah, lower tone, fewer words, fewer gestures, and so I don't know if if that.
Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, if that helps. And if the question was something else, we can feel free to reach out to us individually.
So you brought up a great point. When you're gesturing, when you're speaking loud or your tone, you have to remember where this child is developmentally, okay? And so if their areas of the brain, the processing areas, the visual and auditory are not, if they are under stress or demand, we're going to lower down. And that's say for every individual. It's just not just these kids. It's every adult, right? Like you only have so much bandwidth or energy or battery life, whatever analogy clicks, that, you're just going to start, you ever been in a room? I'm pairing with two kids. Okay. So maybe the TV's on, maybe I'm watching the Super Bowl, the TV's on, there's music. So I'm getting visual stimulus, auditory, and then my kids are jumping around. My brain, what am I going to do? My brain's going to start just melting in a sense and just I need control. And so then you'll see the emotional stuff. So you brought up some just awesome points there.
Yeah. Just to tie in with maybe it's probably the same thing in different words, just to tie that up is if your kids are already prone to emotional dysregulation and maybe some sensory motor challenges, their brains can behave as if they've been through trauma, even if they haven't.
Right.
And for kids, even observing something traumatic or something that's not quite right, triggers in their head as a trauma, but so does even where they're not exposed to those things, because they misperceive information. They're in a hypervigilant state all the time, and so if you put those two things together, you can see how that can kind of sort of compound.
Impact. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, this has been a really fun conversation. We talked about a lot. I don't even know how long we've been in here for. She trapped me in here without a clock, so I have no idea.
That's it. I did do that.
But I hope you've enjoyed this. This has been a lot of fun for us. You're welcome. I think we probably did answer. You probably did answer the question because it was a thank you from the same individual.
Oh, great.
So it's so far and so close at the same time, I can't read the name. It looks like Larry. But thank you for the question. We appreciate all the questions that came through. Thank you so much. Okay, so we have a book coming out. I will post that when it comes out. We'll look early spring-ish, late March, early April.
And I want to say one other thing.
Yeah.
That book, 100% of the proceeds are going to scholarships for kids and families in need.
That's awesome.
This is a passion project, and I just wanted to share that. I didn't do this for money. I did it because I want all of you to have your highest quality of life and thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. If that wasn't conveyed in this, I don't know what.
I didn't say that. Oh, yeah. I'm like,
yes, the passion, the desire to help and serve families and little kiddos. So there's multiple centers, right? But how specifically would they contact this or you again? Let's rehash that.
You can reach me at hwells@brainbalance.com, and I can get you where you need to go.
Perfect. And then you do have 2 open houses. Is that what you call them? Open houses?
Yes. Oh, that's right. Yes. February the 18th and February the 20th in South Lake and Mansfield. You can check out our Facebook pages and get the details on that. But the topic is really interesting. Just briefly, it is about my child is doing fine, and then the bottom drops out, what's going on. And so we are looking at these very specific moments in expectations where it reveals these issues that you might have had a suspicion about or maybe not earlier. And all of a sudden, executive functions are being called on or something else, and kind of explaining those.
Very cool. That would be great. I would love to hear that. Again, I saw that with that little 15-year-old whose mom kept saying, "I'm seeing something," and then she had. I'll use the word adapted. She adapted until she was 15 and got into 9th grade, and then the bottom has fallen out essentially. So awesome. Well, this is our page. Epigenetically speaking, Dr. Brittany is awesome. She does preconception and pregnancy work. So if you have any epigenetic questions related to how do I have my healthiest pregnancy? We're looking to have another child. What lifestyle changes can I do? Reach out to her. Again, 972-387-4700. She'll answer questions like that. You can feel free to reach out to me, Dr. Bryan with Dallas Synergy Chiropractic. Thank you so much again. I appreciate you and everything you do. And if you have any questions, email us, contact us, call us. We're happy. If you have a specific question, you're watching this later, and you want to tag us in this, please do. We'll be sure to answer. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
I've run out of energy. It's time to go. Thank you so much.